Thank you for engaging with me. I think the time is overdue for us to have a conversation on the economic position of our country. As the 30 days ranting of the youth community continues, let us look at the indices that determine this factor of divisiveness in our country. Since after independence, most of our leaders have secured their financial freedom and political freedom with their family members and friends. But the rest of the citizens of Nigeria, over 90%, are languishing. They are languishing in poverty, which has been used to weaponize their decisions. They lose power at the political stand because they are being compromised. Economically, the Nigerian people have been sidelined from the policy that grants citizens participation in the economic scheme of things. There is something that is going on we don't seem to understand. This is inbuilt in our system, but most of us are not looking at it. Officially, we have the public-private partnership model of governance in use for our economy, and that is why you have at the budget, allocations are made for the public and private sectors, but the civil society sector, which is an informal sector, is being neglected. The civil society is being marginalized. They have been ignored and neglected and being avoided by government, by the public and private sectors, because as they bond with themselves, they gain freedom of finance and freedom from political integrations. They have their ways around the entire system while the ordinary people are being lied upon. They lie to the ordinary people and lie upon them as well. Government will tell you that the ordinary people are not paying tax. The reform that is currently being put at the National Assembly is suggesting that 90% of Nigerian citizens are not going to be paying tax. But who is paying the whole tax in terms of VAT? They rob Peter to pay Paul. They increase VAT, generally 15%. They're heading to 15%. From 10%, they want to head to 15%. And what that implies is that VAT being imposed on the manufacturers and the private sectors, at the end of the day, they add money. They include their own profit into the products that they sell. And eventually, the ordinary man who has a very low purchasing power struggles with his life to acquire the same goods and services which everybody else has to pay the same amount for. Dangote, for instance, cannot buy coke more than the amount the poor man pays. And then Dangote and his family, for instance, can afford to stock goods, food items for the 1 month requirement in his home, and then earning commissions from that. The poor man, the ordinary man has very low purchasing power, and he cannot afford to pay so much at a time, and thereby pays more. In the long run, you see that the poor man is the person who is paying more. So what happens? We have an evolution. We have to adapt to the needs of the people. We have to evolve from public-private partnership to the people's public-private partnership. This is the mission of my organization. This is called P4. In some countries, they call it 4P. But in most countries, this is not being implemented. This is the policy that can make the ordinary person join in the national strategy. But if you ask government to include the people's sector, the informal sector, government will have excuses to give. In some cases, they may have good reasons because the civil society sector is disorganized. The people do not come organized like enterprises. In most cases, they don't have a way of presenting themselves to government. We need to apply a system right now. We need to get a member of the National Assembly to take P4 policy to the National Assembly. That is the very first step. so that it can become a law. But then, more importantly, the way we shall begin is to learn how we can organize ourselves. This I will show you in my videos on how we can actually organize ourselves into organizations that can become productive, that can render services to the nation, organizations that will become institutional bodies who will join the people's sector in order for them to become part of the national strategy on a template that will include the public and private sectors as well. Congratulations to you as you join me in this evolutionary trend. Let us use this as our own way of rebelling. If you want to rebel, or if you want to prove a point, organize yourself. If you want to prove a point, prove the point that will grant you victory. And that is what we have to do. If you want to prove to somebody that you can do it. If you want to prove somebody wrong, you must have to organize yourself. So the people must have to organize themselves. And when we are organized, government can include us into the national strategy to become part of government. Because for so long, they've trampled upon us using this policy, and nobody seems to have identified this critical factor. They've lied to us for so long. They've taken us for granted for so long. For so long, we have been trampled upon. The civil society has been manipulated. The civil society has been trampled upon and strangulated economically with a policy unknown to them. Now, this revelation should be for an evolution, not a revolution, because revolutions seem to show red flag. It's actually an evolution because we are moving from P3 to P4. Thank you as you join me on this journey for the P4 evolution in our country.